May peace and power elevation be to all you beautiful people out there. This your girl Tiffany coming through live in effect right here on the StreamYard and on Facebook. So before I get started, I want to give some opportunity to allow the people to come in. That's what I want to do. But at the same time, if you are watching, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the notification bell. And if you're watching from Facebook, also share this video as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give people a few minutes to come on in before I get started. Let me go ahead and get started. So today's topic, I'll be dealing with two prominent African descended brothers. One of the brothers I'm going to be talking about is Eldridge Cleaver, and the other one name is Samuel Coleridge Taylor. So I'm going to go into the story about Eldridge Cleaver and his biography and his life. There's some things that's very interesting about him. And then there's some things that just gives me the side eye when it comes to Eldridge Cleaver. But I want to go ahead and get into his biography. And so let's see, who is Mr. Cleaver? So this is Eldridge Cleaver, and he was the former Black Panther. He was a former member of the Black Panther Party, and he was also a writer. Later, he had converted into Christianity and studied Islam. So he brought about a combination of both Christianity and Islam together. So yes, and he also was serving into politics for a while. So let me go ahead and let's look at his story. Okay. So right here, his real name is Leroy Eldridge Cleaver. Okay. So I'm on the Encyclopedia of Arkansas because that's where he was born, in Arkansas. So Leroy Eldridge Cleaver was one of the best known and most recognizable symbol of African-American rebellion in the 1960s. As a leader of the Black Panther Party in the 1970s, he became born-again Christian and later an active member of the Republican Party. Okay, so what you're gonna know is that a lot of the former Black Panthers, they became Republicans. Like Bobby Seale, he became a Republican. Okay. Eldridge Cleaver became a Republican. So that's a lot of them gravitated towards politics. And then there was some of them that just became Muslim, like Mumia Abu Jamar. He was a Muslim. And then there was those who just stuck with becoming professors, college professors, like Elaine Brown. She became a professor. So a lot of them went to different routes and directions. Okay, so let's look it up. So Eldridge Cleaver was born on August 31st, 1935 in Wabaseka. His father, Leroy Cleaver, was a nightclub entertainer and waiter. His mother, Thelma Hattie Robinson Cleaver, taught elementary school. Many accounts portray Leroy Cleaver as a violent man who beat his wife. Eldridge Cleaver recalled those beatings as the beginning of his ambition to grow up tall and strong like my daddy, but bigger and stronger than he, so I could beat him to the ground the way he beat my mother. Wow. And you know what? One thing I want to say about that is, real quick, when it comes down to witnessing domestic violence in your family, especially when it comes to your parents, it does something psychologically to the child. It makes the child become more rebellious, or it can cause the child to become more cautious of their surrounding. So particularly for females, when we see domestic violence, we become more cautious or become more rebellious. But for the males, they become more rebellious and they become more angry because of what they had to witness, what their mothers have gone through. And they were not old enough to protect their mothers at the time period. Or it was not much they can do because they weren't as physically strong. But when they get older, they start to carry on this anger. And some of them start to pick on abusive behavior, which they learn or witness from their father. Because they felt that that was a way to enter into manhood just by using a form of abuse. So yes, people don't understand that domestic violence can bring a lot of trauma to the child. It does. But let's get back to his story. When Leroy Cleaver got a job in the dining car of a train that ran between Chicago, Illinois, and Los Angeles, California in 1943, the family moved from Arkansas first to Phoenix, Arizona, and finally to the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles in 1946. In Los Angeles, Eldridge Cleaver was repeatedly in legal trouble, including arrests for bicycle theft, selling marijuana. In 1954, he was sent to the California State Prison at Soledad after being convicted of marijuana possession. After his release in 1957, he was convicted of assault with intent to murder and was incarcerated at St. Quentin and then Folsom Prison. So throughout Eldridge Cleaver's life, he's been dealing with a lot of trouble and having a lot of run-ins with the law enforcement. So I currently have his book right here, which is called Soul on Ice. But I'm going to read some information later on, which made me very puzzled and surprised. But this is him telling his story, sharing his life experience from childhood and being a prisoner and being part of the Black Panther Party and learning about communism and all that good stuff. All right, but anyways, let's get back to it. So in the early 1960s, he joined the Black Muslim movement founded by Elijah Muhammad. So yes, he was part of the Nation of Islam. Cleaver denounced the Muslim faith after the 1965 assassination of Malcolm X, but was determined to put into a place Malcolm's dream of the Organization for African Unity. After his release from prison in December of 1966, he became a staff writer for Ramparts magazine and soon met the leaders of the newly formed Black Panther Party, including Huey Newton and Bobby Seale. After witnessing a successful Black Panther showdown with police at the Ramparts office, Cleaver joined the Black Panther Party, believing Newton to be the successor of Malcolm X. After Newton's arrest in March of 1967, following a confrontation with Oakland, California police, Cleaver, the party's Minister of Information, led the Free Huey movement that brought fame to both Cleaver and the party. All right. And it says Cleaver married Kathleen Neal in December of 1967. They had 2 children and divorced in 1987. Okay. So Cleaver was wounded and arrested on April 6 of 1968 in a Black Panther shootout with police. After a judge ordered him released from prison 2 months later, Cleaver undertook a series of lectures at the University of California at Berkeley and ran for president as a candidate of the Peace and Freedom Party. After attempts by Governor Ronald Reagan to stop Cleaver from speaking at Berkeley led to Cleaver's speaking out against Reagan personally. His parole was revoked and Cleaver was ordered back to prison. On November 24th of 1968, 3 days before he was due to turn himself in, Cleaver fled and escaped to Cuba. All right. So Eldridge Cleaver was very radical and very vocal, to the point that Ronald Reagan wanted to shut him down. So he ended up going back to prison. Then he came back out, but just before it was time for him to go back again, he fled to Cuba to get away. So let's see. A few months later, Cleaver was granted asylum in Algeria. His wife joined him there, where they remained until moving to Paris in 1972. While living in Paris, Cleaver converted to Christianity and became motivated to return to the United States. After his 1975 return, Cleaver spent 8 months in jail and performed community service to clear the legal obligations stemming from the 1968 shootout. Cleaver published several books, including the autobiography titled Soul on Ice, 1968, Soul on Fire, 1978, Eldridge Cleaver Post-Prison Writings and Speeches in 1969, Eldridge Cleaver's Black Paper, 1969. And in 1980, Cleaver attempted to create a new religion, Chrislam, which was a combination of Christianity and Islam. In the early 1980s, he joined the Republican Party and endorsed Ronald Reagan in his 1984 presidential re-election campaign. Now, that's very ironic. This was the same man, Ronald Reagan, that shut him down while he was the governor. But he became a Republican and endorsed Ronald Reagan in 1984. That's interesting. Okay. He made several runs for political office between 1984 and 1992, including an unsuccessful candidacy for the Republican nomination in the 1986 U.S. Senate race in California. Cleaver had several drug-related arrests in the late 1980s and early 1990s, but kicked his drug habit and rededicated himself to Christianity. So, like many members of the Black Panther Party, a lot of them, once the Black Panther Party disbanded, right, or became defunct, there was those who turned to drugs. Eldridge Cleaver, Huey Newton, and even Tupac's mother, Afeni Shakur, who one day I'm gonna do information on. She was a member of the Black Panther Party, but she relapsed on drugs really bad. So a lot of them turned to drugs because there was nothing else for them to do. They felt really depressed. Now, it goes on to say that when former colleagues questioned his numerous religious conversion and drastically changing political views, Cleaver said, "I have a very good track record of being ahead of other people in understanding certain truths and taking political position far in advance of the crowd, and turn out to be vindicated by subsequent experience. Yet when I take these experiences, I have been attacked for doing so." And then it says Cleaver died on May 1st of 1998 in Pomona, California, of undisclosed causes. At the time of his death, he was employed by the University of Laverne in Laverne, California, as a diversity consultant. He is buried in Altadena, California. So that's the outline of Eldridge Cleaver's life. I want to add on to it, right? Some sources and information. So one of the sources I have is Soul on Ice. All right. And I'm going to read some information out this book that he has written of what made him join the, study communism and why he got into so many trouble and commit such deviant activities. So, all right, he wrote in Folsom Prison on October the 9th of 1965. This is when he was locked up. Hold on. Shoot, wrong one. Okay, so I'm gonna read the first chapter on becoming. He said, 1954, I was 18 years old and is held to be a crucial turning point in history of the Afro-American for the U.S. as a whole. The year segregation was outlawed by the U.S. Supreme Court. It was also a crucial year for me because on June 18th of 1954, I began serving a sentence in state prison for possession of marijuana. The Supreme Court decision was only 1 month old when I entered prison. And I do not believe that I have had even the vaguest idea of its importance or historical significance. But later, the acrimonious controversy ignited by the end of the separate but equal doctrine was to have a profound effect on me. This controversy awakened me to my position in America, and I began to form a concept of what it meant to be Black in white America. All right, so he was saying 18 years old, that's when he first got incarcerated. Okay, so now he put in Solid State Prison. I fell in with a group of young Black who, like myself, was in vociferous rebellion against what we perceive as a continuation of slavery on a higher plane. We curse every American, including baseball, and hot dogs. All respect we may have had for politicians, preachers, lawyers, governors, presidents, senators, congressmen was utterly destroyed as we watched them temporizing and comprising over right and wrong, over legality and illegality, over constitutionality and unconstitutionality. We knew that in the end, what we were clashing over was us, what to do with the Blacks and whether or not to start treating us as human beings. I despise all of them. All right. But then he goes on to talk about how in this book where he started to study atheism and he rejected the idea of God. He said, while all this was going on, our group was espousing atheism, unsophisticated and not based on any philosophical rationale. Our atheism was pragmatic. I had come to believe that there is no God. If there is, men do not know anything about them. Therefore, all religions were phony, which made all preachers and priests in our eyes fakers, including the ones scurrying around the prison, who curiously could put in a good word for you with the almighty creator of the universe, but could not get anything down with the warden or parole board. They could usher you through the pearly gates after you were dead, but not through the prison gates while you were still alive and kicking. Besides, men of the cloth who worked in prison have an ineradicable stigma attached to them in the eyes of convicts because they escort condemned men into the gas chamber. Such men of God are powerful arguments in favor of atheism. Our atheism was a source of enormous pride to me. All right, so at that time when he was young, he began to study atheism while he was locked up because he felt like religion wasn't anything useful to him. So let's see what else. All right, and then he talks about how he converted into the Nation Islam. He said, in 1958, after I gone out on parole and was returned to St. Quentin as a parole violator with a new charge, Butterfly, which was the guy that he was currently locked up with, was still there. He had become a Black Muslim and was chiefly responsible for teaching me the Black Muslim philosophy. Upon his release from St. Quentin, Butterfly joined the Los Angeles Mosque, advanced rapidly through the ranks, and is now a full-fledged minister of one of Elijah Muhammad's mosques in another city. He successfully completed his parole, got married to a very Black girl, and is doing fine. And so then he goes on to say that from our discussion, which began that evening and has never ended, we went on to notice how thoroughly, as a matter of course, a Black growing up in America is indoctrinated with the white race standard of beauty. Not that the whites made a conscious, calculated effort to do this. We thought, but since they constituted the majority, the white brainwashed the Blacks by the very process the whites employed to indoctrinate themselves with their own group standards. Intensified my frustration to know what I was indoctrinated to see the white woman as more beautiful and desirable than my own Black woman. It drove me into books seeking light on the subject. In Richard Wright's Native Son, I found bigger Thomas and a keen insight into the problem. All right, so then he goes on to talk about the catechism, right? So he says, I fell in love with Buckham and Nichole, catechism of the revolutionists, the principle of which, along with some of Machiavelli's advice, I sought to incorporate into my own behavior. I took the catechism for my Bible and standing on one-man platform that had nothing to do with the reconstruction of society. I began consciously incorporating these principles into my daily life to employ tactics of ruthless in my dealing with everyone with whom I came into contact, and I began to look at white America through these new eyes. And so this is the part which really rubbed me the wrong way about Eldridge Cleaver. So in this book right here, he admits that he was a rapist. He said, I became a rapist to refine my technique and modus operandi. I started out by practicing on Black girls in the Black ghetto, where dark and vicious deeds appear not as aberration or deviation from the norm, but as part of the sufficiency of the evil of a day. When I consider myself smooth enough, I crossed the tracks and sought out white prey. I did this consciously, deliberately, willfully, and methodically. Though looking back, I see that I was in frantic, wild, and completely abandoned frame of mind. And then he goes on to say, rape wasn't in such, in such a rare act. It delighted me that I was defying and trampling upon the white man's law and upon his system of values, and that I was defiling his women. And this point, I believe, was the most satisfying to me because I was very resentful over the historical fact of how the white man has used the black woman. I felt I was getting revenge. From the sight of the act of rape, consternation spreads out outwardly in concentric circles. I wanted to send waves of consternation throughout the white race. Recently, I came upon a quotation from one of Leroy Jones' poems taken back from his book, The Dead Lecturer. A cult of deaf need of the simple striking arm under the street lamp, the colors from under their rented earth come up, black data nihilimists, rape the white girls, rape their fathers, cut the mother's throat. And then he goes on to say that I have lived those lines, and I know that if I have not been apprehended, I would have slit some white throats. There are, of course, many young blacks out there right now who are slitting white throats and raping the white girl. They are not doing this because they read Leroy Jones' poetry, as some of his critics seem to believe. Rather, Leroy is expressing the funky facts of life. After I returned to prison, I took a long look at myself, and for the first time in my life, admitted out that I was wrong, that I have gone astray that not so much from the white man's law as being human, civilized for I could not approve the act of rape. Even though I had some insight into my own motivation, I did not feel justified. I lost my self-respect. My pride as a man dissolved, and the whole fragile moral structure seemed to collapse, completely shattered. All right, then. So that's his book right there. If you never checked this book out, you need to go ahead and check it out, Eldridge Cleaver. So anyways, Eldridge Cleaver admit that he was a former rapist and that he was doing it as a way to build up his methodology, or was supposed to be a form of revolutionary act against the white man, but it didn't do him any good because it set his behind back in prison. So he realized that he was sick and fucked up in the head. So because he was so fucked up in the head, he had to realize that, okay, now it's time for me to own up to this and do something totally different in my life. But he had a sick ass way of thinking because he thought that he was going to get revenge by going around here raping women. And that was a no-no. It was not going to happen. It wasn't doing him any good. So let's see. I got some more information. Oh, let me get that off here. All right. So I got some PDFs here, which is called The Black Revolutionaries in the United States, Communist Intervention, Volume 2. All right, so, and then these are the table of contents. Let's see. All right, so one, talk about the Revolutionary Action Movement, the 12-point program of RAM. And then it goes into All right. So here's the one dealing with Eldridge Cleaver, the ideology of the Black Panther Party in 1969. Okay. So it goes on to say, we have said the ideology of the Black Panther Party is the historical experience of Black people and the wisdom gained by Black people in their 400-year-long struggle against the system of racist oppression and economic exploitation in Babylon, interpreted through the prism of the Marxist-Leninist analysis or analyst by our Minister of Defense, Huey P. Newton. All right, so that's chapter 10.3, right? And that's Eldridge Cleaver. So the name of it is The Black Revolutionary in the United States, Communism, Volume 2. And if you want to look that up, you can look that up on your own term. All right. Right here. Okay, so let's go on to the next thing. Here's some more information. Indiana University Press, Eldridge Cleaver on ICE. This is the interview that he did with Henry Louis Gates Jr. All right, so this was done in 1970 or in the 70s, around 1975. So here's the transcript of the interview that he did with Henry Louis Gates Jr. So there it is. All right. And then on the freedomarchives.org, The Ideology of the Black Panther Party by Eldridge Cleaver. The Ideology of the Black Panther Party by Eldridge Cleaver. And it says, we have said the ideology of the Black Panther Party is historical experience of the Black people and the wisdom gained by Black people in their 400-year-long struggle against the system of racist oppression and economic exploitation. Babylon interpreted through the press. All right. So basically, he was one of the head leaders of the Black Panther Party, right next to Huey Newton. And then he put down, he said, for too long, Black people have relied upon the analysis and ideological perspective of others. Our struggle has reached a point now where it would be absolutely suicidal for us to continue this posture of dependency. No other people in the world are in the same position as we are, and no other people in the world can get us out of it except ourselves. There are those who are all too willing to do our thinking for us, even if it get us killed. However, they are not willing to follow through and do our dying for us. If thoughts bring about our deaths, let them at least be our own thoughts, so that we will have broken once and for all with the flunkyism of dying for every cause and every era except for our own. All right, so that's his book right there. It's called The Ideology of the Black Panther Party by Eldridge Cleaver. Well, it's an article, actually. Okay. Yeah. There we go. Okay. So that concludes this video for today. So later on, I will continue on with the part 2, dealing with Samuel Coleridge Taylor, who was a music composer from England. So I will deal with that later on. But as of right now, that's all I wanted to do as far as the topic on Eldridge Cleaver. If you want to look it up for yourself, you can go back and watch this video. Until next time, you guys, please have a wonderful day. Please be safe. And I will talk to you all later. This is your girl, Tiffany. May peace and power elevation be to all of you. And until then, deuces. All right. Take it easy.